They're not ready to hear about safety. They're scared about the safety because they've taken it, most of them. But you can tell them about the fact they didn't work and the fact that we know these things don't work. You know, when you've got a respiratory virus that replicates in the respiratory epithelium, injections that make antibodies in the blood don't stop infection, and that's been known for decades.
Hello, this is Will Coleshill reporting for Vox Populi. I'm down here reporting on the launch of not one but two amazing books into the COVID con, the lockdowns and the lies of the jabs, the mandates and absolutely everything. So I'm going to be going around speaking to the authors and finding out what's going on here. So do you want to tell us what your book is about?
Yes, I will tell you what the book is about. It's about the pursuit of the truth. It's about what's gone on over the past 6 years, and it's about exposing the lies. And I would say that it is a meticulously researched, evidence-based expose of what's gone on, and I hope people read it.
So you know that I think my podcast with you was the best podcast I've ever done. What is going on here today?
Oh, thank you, Will. I'm glad to hear that. Today is my book launch. So I've written a book, Spiked, which is about how the vaccines did not work, they could not work, and it's full of all the evidence of what everybody knew regarding that at the time. And it also explains why people were not told that because of this censorship industrial kind of complex that was created.
And what's the worst thing you think you've discovered in writing the book?
The shamelessness of the lies. The shamelessness and what they did and what they got away with, really, and how people complied. And so I would say this book is really to wake people up, and it's got over 900 citations, over 120 images, screenshots, leaked emails and documents, Freedom of Information Act pages that I've gone through, thousands of pages. So it's a deep dive into what went on.
I mean, so the big stuff is around going through all of the kind of official public health data releases and showing how, if you look at the percentage of people in a household who would get sick if someone came home with COVID, that percentage did not change before and after the vaccine. And then you go and look at the percentage of people that develop an antibody, and that percentage did not change before and after the vaccine. And so you can go at it, from all these different directions, and it's actually really, really clear. And you don't need to be a scientist to understand this stuff. It's actually really simple. And so I've just written it all down really carefully, just laying it all out, like this is what happened. And it's kind of weird that we're still this many years on in a situation where these obvious realities are being denied.
And it's been a long journey, I take it.
It has been a long journey. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a slow and careful person, and I want it to all be right. And the story was evolving a bit as it went along, so that changed things. But the story of efficacy is over. Like the evidence is there. It's a cut and dry case. The story of safety is evolving still.
And how bad do you think the consequences have been?
So I think the consequences have been far worse than any official has admitted to. I think that you need to wait for a long time to get long-term outcomes measured. People are refusing to measure it. Data sets not being released. But in terms of the efficacy, the vaccines did not stop any infections, and they did not stop they didn't prevent hospitalizations and deaths either. When you look at it in a proper big picture analysis, whichever angle you come at it from, you get the same answer. And people just don't want to hear that.
And do you think that now is the right time? Now people are waking up, would you say? Do you think it's breaking through?
Yes, I think people are waking up to the truth, because I think they can't hide what's gone on. It's becoming too obvious. And I think when they overplay their hand, which they've done, it becomes so obvious. And I think more and more people are waking up, and they realize that what the BBC says isn't the gospel truth. They need to question more. They need to really dig and find out what's going on. And this book does that job, just read it so you don't have to do your own digging, because I've done that for like over 5 years.
And if you had to give a 10-second pitch quickly to anyone who's thinking of buying the book?
Read it for the relentless pursuit of the truth.
Buy this book. There's nobody else writing about this topic. It's an incredibly important topic. The COVID vaccines did not work. They did not stop infections or hospitalizations or deaths. And until we can start having that conversation, then nobody's living in the real world.
So, Peter, what do you think of the book launches?
I think they're awesome. It's great to catch up. I've never actually met Sonia before. She's been on the show before. Met up with Claire. And it's great to see two people coming together and working on a topic that maybe actually is competing, but actually to come at this from different angles. To come at this from the journalistic angle with Sonia, and Claire comes at this from a very different, looking at the medical side, looking at the data side. So it's fascinating, and I think a lot of people say, surely, we should be finished with this topic. Come on, you just move on. How can you move on from this horrendous destruction that's been done on many people in the UK who've been sold a lie? So I think both books are amazing in highlighting what's happening and giving the story, and the endorsements on the back. That's a testimony to the great work they've both done.
So what's brought you down here today then?
Well, I know Sonia and Martin, and I've been very interested in the subjects for a long time. I was suspicious about the COVID measures very early on, and so yes, I was quite excited about the book launch. I've been reading it, haven't been able to put it down. It's very well written, a lot more readable than I thought it was going to be. But very enlightening. It's just put a huge amount of research in it, and it's all referenced. So, yeah, well done, Sonia.
So what's brought you down here today then?
Well, it was an absolute honour. I was invited by Claire because it's her book launch of Spiked, which goes into the nitty gritty as to why the COVID jabs are a bad idea. And I think that is fundamental. And I think, as she spoke about in her speech, the world was not necessarily prepared for this level of discourse, talking about. It was a scary time, COVID, for a lot of people, and obviously that was through manipulation, that was through fear, that was through nudge units. But we're in 2026 now, and there is an appetite for an answer as to what went wrong when they pushed experimental mRNA jabs into our arms. And I think that is exactly what Spiked is, what it symbolises, and as a personal friend who is, Claire is a personal friend, I think that just watching her from the COVID days to now, and I'm 20, right? So I always looked up to Claire. I remember when I was like 15 years old, I was actually watching Claire break down the jabs and stuff. It's incredible to see how, as I reuse the word, the appetite has shifted when it comes to wanting to know about the COVID jabs. So I think it's amazing. Claire is the OG. She is the one that we need to platform. She is the best person I have ever met to scientifically, but also in a palatable and kind of, I'm going to use a common way, because people don't understand epidemiology and understand how vaccines work, even though this wasn't a vaccine. And Claire does it in such a miraculous and honest and authentic way that I want to spread as much positivity for this book and shed as much light on Claire as an individual to promote, because she is the best. I don't know what to say. She's the best person on this topic.
I'm here today to support Claire, who's become a very good colleague in the fight over the COVID. The whole scam, being the biggest scam in my lifetime. And interestingly, that it made me realise that the blueprint of this scam, which I can never ever believe anybody could be so evil to have done, was identical to the climate change. And I've just been asked to do the introductory chapter to a series of articles on climate change that basically tell the truth. And I was asked on the grounds that the editor said I was the first to point out these things were exactly the same. And I said in a word, these scams are essentially removing the maximum amount of money from the very poor to give to the exceedingly rich who don't need it in the first place. So it is about totalitarianism control.
So I decided to start collating the data and the evidence
and writing. But being my own worst boss, I wanted it out as soon as possible. What's the point of waiting? It's relevant now. By 2022, I'd written 150,000 words, and I hired an editor. He read it carefully, and then he said, 4 words, cut it in half. And I felt sick. I thought, how? The whole story needs to be the whole story. But in the end, I decided to remove the vaccine and make a book that was palatable for the time we were in then. And that book was Expired, which was a book that sort of gently held people's hands and took them through, despite the fact they had been frightened by the things they had been told about viral spread and lockdowns and masks. It avoided the V word, vaccine. And I think people were ready for that book in 2023, but perhaps they were not ready for this book.
And you now work for Restore Britain, so you're quite happy with the policy that you've got on the jabs and the lockdowns and everything?
Well, look, it's really clear. Restore's position is that the COVID days were the darkest days in modern British history. I mean, they took away our fundamental rights, or should I say they attacked our fundamental rights, because you can't really take them away, but they attacked them. They locked people in their homes, backed on no honest data, no science. They literally coerced and manipulated the British public into believing unscientific, immoral, corrupt lies, and turned us into an Orwellian system of global enslavement when it came to denying reality and forcing people to believe that 2 + 2 = 5. And so I think Restore's position is really, really clear. We need justice, we need accountability, we need recognition, because if you can't recognize the past, if you can't justify something that was horrific, because of course it's unjustifiable, then you shouldn't have any role or have any impact or contribution to future power. For example, I believe that Restore will be the next government, but Reform nevertheless invited Nadim Zahawi in, who pioneered vaccine passports, vaccine mandates, and promoted the vaccine itself. He was vaccine minister. Why the hell was he invited into Reform? I mean, the man should literally be on trial for crimes against humanity, in my opinion. So I think that what Restore symbolises is hope, and whilst it's digging up the past, that is preparing us for the future. If we can't recognise what went wrong, then we can't fix the future. It's as simple as that. And people that want to brush it under the carpet, that is a lazy and immoral thing to do, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
So we need justice.
We need justice.
And Restore's going to bring it?
Restore will bring it.
And do you think it's now finally time that this narrative is going to break through into the mainstream?
I think more and more people are open to listening, I think. I think some people are still afraid to consider the possibility that government manipulated things as much as they did. People want to trust in the good of people and the good of society and the good of a government that's for you instead of one that wants to control you.
What was the moment that really woke you up to all of it?
What woke me up to it was the fact that I was cancelled for pointing out the obvious. We had a very good line in. I knew someone knew Michael Gove. We presented all the evidence to Michael Gove. It was presented to Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance, both at my medical school. They refused to engage with me. Chris Whitty insulted me by saying I was just a cancer doc. What did I know? When I actually was one of the most published people in the world for HIV. I discovered the receptor, the epidemiology, the pathogenesis. I was the first to predict that the HIV vaccine based on the envelope would never ever work. I had kind of explosive rows with Fauci, but because I wasn't dependent on him for funding, I was quite happy to keep these up. Everybody else shut up. And I then realized that Fauci was a fraud. And if I don't need to say anything more, that Ken McCready's written a book called Fauci's First Fraud, and that was how he manipulated HIV. And then looking back in those days, I realized it's exactly the same. Fear, 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 fear. Nobody is immune, and nobody's safe, everybody's safe. Except it wasn't the vaccine then, because they thought they'd do the randomized trials that proved they've done 3 mega global ones, all of them failed. I mean, why would you do it again when people like myself and other very good immunologists have pointed out it's impossible to do an HIV vaccine on the envelope? There's too many antigens, 3,000. You've got to pick a few selected ones, and that's the way to make a successful vaccine. And he wouldn't. I suddenly realised that Fauci was more than stupid. I came to the conclusion he was unbelievably stupid, but he couldn't be a total moron to have done what he did. And I came to the conclusion he was very evil.